So when you want to surround yourself by Christians, right? So you're like, okay, cool. I'm going to surround myself by other Christians. But then even within that, there's such a disparity between men and women in the singleness realm, right? So there's so many single Christian women, and then there's so many less single Christian men. Okay, cool. So now as single Christian women, you're in a church. You're like, cool. I've left a space that felt hopeless. I'm in the church and I'm sitting in a room and I'm looking around and there's 20 single Christian women and there's 2 single Christian men and they're your brothers. So like, what do you do? So my thing is I wanted to create a platform where we can have conversations like that, because I think it's like miscommunication on both sides that needs to change.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to Word Made Digital. I'm your host, Joanna LaFleur. This is episode 13 of 2023, and we are celebrating about 150 episodes. So we decided it was time to, kind of ignore the seasons and start some sort of new numbering system, but we haven't figured it out yet. We're in season, episode 13, and Meisha Watson is our guest today. I'm so excited to have her. She's been on before, and we talked to her previously about how she's hosting and producing this amazing national children's television show and this programming that she's doing online for kids. And her new project, though, is what we have her on for today. And it is all about dating in the digital age. It's a full-time podcast project called My Single Story, and it's all about navigating dating, digital life, online dating. How do we meet people in this age? So it's a fun conversation. I think you're going to love it. Thank you so much, of course, to our sponsors who are making this whole season possible. Compassion Canada, who's been with us for a long time, and we're really grateful for their partnership and believe in what they're doing. They are lifting children from poverty in Jesus' name. And then Scripture Untangled, a podcast by the Canadian Bible Society. I've had the privilege of being part of that from the beginning, and if you haven't checked it out, would love for you to do so. More on them later, links in the show notes, but let me tell you a little bit about Meisha and remind you that Meisha's previous episode, all our previous stuff, you can subscribe, rate, review, whether you're listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. But YouTube, we would love you to hit subscribe on our YouTube channel so you don't miss what's coming out, but also so that you can connect with us and engage and rate and comment and all that kind of stuff. It helps us know that you're part of the community. It means a lot. So let me tell you a little bit about Meisha Watson. She's a host, a director, a writer, a producer. She's originally from England, came to Canada at about 14, 15 years old. So she's got this Canadian-British mix of an accent, and she's worked in the entertainment industry for 12 years. She presented at the Canadian Screen Awards. She's been interviewing top chefs across Canada. She hosted, if you're Canadian, you know, YTV, The Zone. We all grew up watching this, and these people were like our idols. You know, we admired them, and she was one of those hosts. And currently, she's the executive producer and host of this brand new podcast, what I've already mentioned to you. My Single Story is what it's called. It's fun, it's music, and it's Bible teaching, and it's all this kind of stuff all mixed into one, like she just did on her Hey Meisha Kids program. She's doing the same thing in these conversations on My Single Story, bringing entertainment and fun and great questions to the conversation. So please enjoy this interview we have with her all about the digital world of dating. Here's Meisha Watson. Meisha Watson, welcome back to Word Made Digital.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me back, girl.
I felt like it was about time because, well, I was on your podcast recently and it made me remember I just like talking to you.
I like talking to you too. I love talking to you.
But also it made me realize like what you're doing, I think, is actually quite unique. What you're building right now. And I think like we should talk about it. And even and so before we go any further, introduce yourself and then let's go into what your project is, your main project right now.
Yes. Hello, everyone listening out there in the world. My name is Meisha Watson. I am the creator of the My Single Story podcast. We are all about giving a platform to single women of God, uplifting us, but giving us a space to be open, honest, and authentic. And we've started and we are rolling and rocking, and it is a fun experience, and I'm excited to talk about it.
So I mean, there's a number of places I want to go today. Like, I want to talk about podcasting. I want to talk about the world of, like, you come from a world of television and now you're in this world of podcasting. Like, what's the same? What's different? I want to talk about this topic, though, like singleness. Word Made Digital is not a podcast for single women, but as one myself, I'm curious that there are other single women or just single people listening who may be interested in like getting behind this, and also people who are not single, frankly, like what's up with this world of like digital dating? People make jokes about the swipe left and the apps, but like, do people really get what's going on there? So I think this is a conversation worth having. Okay, let's go back like to just this podcast concept as a whole. Like, you're working in television, you're doing children's television.
Yeah.
And now you're like, let's do a podcast for single women. So why now?
Yeah.
How did this happen? How did this transition happen for you?
Yeah, it's wild. So basically for the last 8 years, I've been working in children's television. 4 years I was working at YTV Super Secular Television, and then moving over into Crossroads and doing like fully like Bible-based, faith-founded content. And while doing that, God has been growing my faith and my curiosity into learning more about how to spread the gospel, how to tell stories from the Bible, et cetera, et cetera. But while doing that, online on my own Instagram, I started sharing about my single story, because during my space of, during pandemic, I was like talking about it all the time because I was literally by myself. So my Instagram on my phone was my friend. So I started sharing a lot in that.
You were literally like, you were living alone.
Yeah, I was living alone.
With lockdowns, you were just by yourself the time.
Yeah, all the time. Like my condo was like this beautiful fortress for me. But I used my phone to connect with others. I was like, hey, single women, like, what are we doing? Like, are we good? Like, collectively? And so I started sharing about it, and I came back to work and I spoke with my boss, and I was like, God is doing something in my heart right now. Like, God is like getting me into a place where I'm confident in being vulnerable about my singleness. That was a shift for me. I could do the fun stuff. I could talk about the dating side of it, but the hardship of it, the lamenting, the loneliness, the feeling let down, the doubt, all that kind of stuff, how that doubt affects my faith and my trust in God, like all those kind of things. I was like, I need to talk about it. And God brought me to a place where I was able to do it on a platform. And I told my boss, and she was like, let's figure it out. Because obviously it's quite a shift to go from kids content. People are so used to seeing me this way. How do I shift to this way? And so we took quite a while to kind of like curate this idea. What was it going to be? Like, would it be a podcast? Would it be another show? And eventually we boiled it down to, it needs to be a podcast, but we need to have content wherever the single women are. And they're online, they're on Instagram. They also are on TikTok, which is coming soon. But our main goal was like, let's just go where single women of God are and where women are. And that's what we did.
Well, and even as you say, as you just listed that, when you're talking about platforms, that's the dynamic today that I find so fascinating. Because sure, okay, it's a podcast, but it's not just audio. You're also doing video. It's not just video. You're also doing like social media. You're creating reels and all this stuff. Like it is immediately what is required of you creating new content in 2023 is like, be everywhere in all the places. Do you feel like the pressure of that, or like, are you just trying to like focus in on a couple? Like, how are you thinking about that side of it?
Absolutely. There is a pressure to it. I think there's a pressure to feeling like you're missing or you've missed the gate in a sense. Like you are, like, because with podcasts, they've been around for so long. And I was like, well, are we late? You know, a lot of people feel like, are they late? And I know you spoke about on your show before, are we late to start a podcast? But then I figured out that, you know, statistically, a lot of podcasts don't carry on past season 1 or season 2. I was like, okay, great. So if we can create a process that means that my team doesn't get burnt out creating this content, like how many things can we do one time and then allow it to live in multiple places?
Yeah.
So once we figured out that, we knew that we could shoot content in a studio that was always going to be there, with cameras that shoot in 6K, which means that when we release it in 4K, it's great. But in 2-3 years, if everyone moves to 6K content, we're already there. So that was really important. also, while we're shooting, we might frame it as a wide shot, but we make sure that we know what it looks like in a vertical shot so we can shoot it for reels. We also, as we're talking to people, as I'm asking questions, I'm thinking, okay, this will be great for a 30-second reel, because I know that even though reels are a minute, I only listen to them for 30 seconds. So I was like, okay, how can I shorten it? And so in the room of our podcast, we actually have my associate producer, Stephanie, and then we have my technical director. And Stephanie, as I hear something in a podcast, I put my hand on the table. That's kind of a signal to her, like, because you can't see it in the video, but a signal to her, hey, that's the timestamp where we're going to have to pull that content right there. And so literally by the end of the day, so we shoot the podcast usually at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday. By the end of the day, we've already pulled like 20 pieces of content from that one interview. And we've stuck the same sting on the end, and we've already uploaded it to YouTube. Like, we just have found a process so that the team isn't burnt out, but we're being as efficient as possible with the content that we're making.
Okay, I love this. Even this, like, behind the scenes on, like, you have like a hand signal.
Yeah.
And well, I think that the piece that you're describing here is taking podcasting to a level that's like sustainable, but also like multi-channel, means it actually requires like multiple people on your team.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, in the same, I'm not shooting in 6K over here, but in the same way for myself, there's like a team of people that are involved in producing this. And so when a lot of people say, oh, I want to start a podcast, what I appreciate is that the reason you can go the distance is because with your background in all this media creation, television, like you're saying, like, I actually understand what it's going to take to do this and to do it long term. Like, it isn't just like me and a microphone in a room. There's so much more than that.
Yeah, absolutely. And because we work at Crossroads, it's a media organization. So we're not only doing the podcast. Yeah. So in order to make sure that when we did the podcast, we did it well, and out the gate, we were high quality, we had to start with processes. I was like, okay, we need to figure out a way that we can shoot the podcast, edit the podcast, and upload the podcast for distribution in a day. Because if we need to switch gears and we need to help another show, we have a streaming platform. I have my kids show, Hey Meisha, still going on. All those kind of things. We need to be able to switch gears. We have vacation days, personal days, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Like, it's a blessing to have full-time staff, but my full-time staff isn't working on this content full-time. Also, we wanted to release 2 pieces of content every single day. That's a lot of content. And we've been only shooting for, at this point, less than 2 months. And we have like 130 pieces of content out there right now. That's a lot. But in order to do that, it was all about the process.
And when you say 2 pieces, because like this is the stuff I love to break down here on this podcast. Like, do you mean 2 pieces on one platform, or you mean like we want to put something out on YouTube, we want to put something out on TikTok, like, or when you say 2 pieces, you mean 2 pieces on every platform, or like different platforms, or how are you thinking about, like, 2 pieces is a lot.
It is a lot, but I'm just curious. Yeah, no, like, right now it's 2 pieces of content on Instagram. Okay. It doesn't include the rest of the content. So for instance, we upload to YouTube, but we don't promote our YouTube account. We're going to do that all at once. Because YouTube has totally different strategies. So Instagram is all about every day posting, like, 5 to 10 stories a day. So there's engagement, seeing someone's face in the story so they feel relatable. And then also making sure you have the right hashtags, the right tags, all that kind of stuff in the posts. Then we figured out that Instagram's all about photos again. Cool. Now we got it. So we mixed it up. So we're like, okay, let's get a reel where I'm talking and there's my face. But then let's also get a picture that has a really sentimental message. And so we just kind of like mix it up. And then I found out just recently people care about your grid again on Instagram. I was like, oh man, you don't even think about that.
Okay, let's talk about that. Do you, none of us are getting younger, and the platforms change like all the time. Like, it feels like you make a plan. It sounds like you've made a plan. You're building systems, strategies, how to get this out. And then like, oh yeah, Instagram's like, now we want photos. Now we want videos. Now we want you know what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm just curious of your personality type or even your team. Like, does that excite you, or is that like, we just made a plan and now we have to change it? It's so frustrating.
I mean, it varies, because some stuff it's like, I know we can pull that off. So I know that with Instagram, regardless of where it shifts to, I'm on Instagram more than any other platform. So I have no problem when Instagram changes gears for me to follow them. But for instance, on YouTube, even though I'm on it every single day, every morning I watch something on YouTube, when they pulled out shorts, I was like, that felt like a whole new animal, because I was like, I was so used to trending audio on Instagram Reels and so used to, okay, I need a thumbnail, I need a this. And on YouTube, it just looks really different. So it doesn't translate as quick. I thought we could just be like, cool. For instance, on Facebook, let's say, right? Like, we don't really have much of a Facebook uh, audience, but we do have a Facebook account because we felt like, why not have that part of the platform? So we released the content on Facebook and it does all right, but we know it does really well on Instagram. What I'm realizing now is the same content doesn't quite work on YouTube. The video does, but the strategy to get it seen by many people is very different. So yeah, there's a bit of a pressure with the multi-channel thing, but not when I'm on the thing I'm comfy with. I have no problem.
As we talk about navigating the world of digital dating, I'm also thinking about the Canadian Bible Society and Scripture Untangled, because that's a whole other thing we need to untangle. For you, does the Bible ever feel overwhelming, confusing, hard to believe? Well, our latest season of Scripture Untangled, which is a podcast by the Canadian Bible Society, is bringing you interviews with culture leaders, leaders in ministry, and Bible thinkers to inspire you to dive into the Bible, untangle, and understand it. You can listen for free and subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast. You can visit scriptureuntangled.ca for more info. Scriptureuntangled.ca. And as always, links will be in the show notes. Because I'm continuing to follow my curiosity, what is the difference you see? I mean, I've never created reels, or sorry, I've done reels, YouTube shorts. I've never created YouTube shorts. I know more like reels, TikTok. What would you say? Are you saying like you can post the same content, but you have to do like a different thumbnail? Like what are you finding what is different about the YouTube thing? Because suddenly we've gone from like 12-minute videos on YouTube getting the views to like you need something that's 30 seconds to even hope that people might find your channel.
Yeah, it's weird because remember in the beginning of YouTube, it'd be like if you had a certain amount of hours watched or a certain amount of subscribers, then you could have a 10-minute video. And now it's like everyone can have a 10-minute video. So we put our whole show on, which is 45 minutes. So we were like, great, it's there. We kind of know how to make that happen. We can put ads on our YouTube video. Once we get to a certain amount of watch hours throughout the year, we can start monetizing it. We know how to do that part because we work at Crossroads. So here, other people are already doing that. So we were like, we can make that happen. But the shorts, you have less characters on the for the caption, for the description. So we couldn't use the amount of hashtags we used on Instagram. Right. You also can't add a location. Location's really helpful because it helps with your demographic, like really narrowing in on them. So that didn't work. Okay, cool. Thumbnails. We usually like having a really souped up, high quality, like glamour photo of our guest for the thumbnail. That doesn't really work on YouTube. Cool. So we're just really trying. I posted a video that was 15 seconds and it was a spoken word video. It got like 1,200 views. I'm like, okay, 1,200 views is good. We posted the same video, just like a different 15 seconds, same energy, same coloring, same hashtag, different, like a fairly different description. I think it got like 3 views. I'm like, what is going on? So we're still figuring it out.
And then on Instagram, it's popping off.
Oh, it got like 18,000 views, the same video. I'm like, I don't get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, some of that is like it's the learning. I mean, some of it is playing the game and some of it is like the learning as it changes. And some of it is like, you just don't know.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, hey God, this is up to you now. Like all of it is kind of like, thank you. Like we had no idea that video is called Daughter of God. I wrote it with my partner here and we uploaded it and we're like, hopefully it does well. 18,000 views, no money added, just within the first week. I was like, amazing.
So what do you think it is about that like, I mean, obviously you're trying to figure that out. So people connected. So let's go back to the whole purpose of the podcast itself, like my single story, like people, 18,000 views you didn't pay for, at least on this platform, like the Instagram platform, is representing like this is resonating. I assume this means people are sharing it with their friends, they're saving it, they're looping it. They're watching it more than one time. you know, at one level, that must just fire you up. Like, this is something that like is serving a need.
Yeah, oh,
but
yeah.
like, what are you learning through, like, or maybe even the feedback from that video? Like, what is going on in this world of like, you're talking to like, hey, single woman,
Yeah.
like you're seen, you're loved, you're valued.
Yeah.
Like you have a purpose, you know, whatever this amazing, it's almost like a spoken word poem.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. It was, we really niched ourselves. We were like, okay,
Yeah.
we need to reach single women of God, wherever they are in your journey of God, with knowing God. And if you're single, this is who we're reaching. Now, we reach single women of all kinds, whether they were married before and no longer married, whether they had kids or whatever. Like, we reach all single women. But we talk to single women who've never been married before. We don't dilute the conversation and say, you know, maybe this is your story, maybe this is your... We try and narrow in. And when I wrote that message, Single Women of God, we were like, we need to write it to ourselves. What do we need to hear? What would encourage us? And so that's how we did it. There was a hashtag for a while on TikTok called Lucky Girl. I'm a lucky girl, or I have like a lucky affirmations. Like, this is me being a lucky girl. It's me being a lucky girl. And I was like, nah, I'm not for that. So we wrote it into the message, like, you are not a lucky girl, but a blessed daughter of the Lord of all. So I wanted women to hear it and go like, oh yeah, I have been hearing that rhetoric a lot. Because like me, they're probably watching the same kinds of stuff on Instagram. So I was like, okay, let's write it in a way that catches them. They know, oh, I know that reference. I have another one coming up where we actually list out all of the couples that I grew up watching. So like Grey's Anatomy, Gossip Girl, like all those kinds of shows, like actually pulling on some of those references to say like, I know these are the stories you've seen in the past. This is what it means to appreciate love a romance, but at the same time, trust God with your own love story. So being able to do that. And so niching it and saying, this is our girl, this is how old she is, this is like, she likes to, I don't know, go out with the girls, have a brunch day, like all that kind of stuff, really niching out our demographic it's been so helpful.
Yeah, that's so interesting, right? Because there's this thinking of like, if you get too specific with who you're talking to, well, you're going to lose the opportunity. Well, we are, you know, the classic thing I think in the marketing world is of like people who are like, well, who are you trying to reach? Everyone. Well, then you're going to reach nobody.
Yeah.
You know? But what you're doing is you're going in so specifically, and that is where you found like the video that hit off at 18,000 views is you started talking exactly to who you're trying to reach.
Yeah.
You're not like, hey, all you women out there, or Christian women, or, you know, you're going like single girl.
Yeah, literally that. And it's been such a blessing because even for the girls who are dabbling in their faith and are kind of like, I know there's more to life. When they listen, we talk about God as a matter of fact foundation. And I think that's also helpful because it's uplifting to them. They're like, oh, there's more to this journey of knowing who God is. So we're not necessarily there going like, you know, you need to know who you're God. We're not necessarily there, ministering to them in a way that's about their salvation necessarily. We talk about our day-to-day lives, but by nature of talking honestly and telling our story, which is why it's called My Single Story, was because I wanted to just talk vulnerably and allow them to see themselves in parts of my story and my guests.
Yeah. So what are you seeing as like the state of affairs, if I may call it that? Like what is up with the world of single? I mean, because we're talking about single women for you. So I'm thinking I go more like broadly single men and women just because men and women listen to my podcast. But broadly, like where are we at with this whole singleness thing? Can we go into that world of like online dating? Take that where you want to go. Let's start, and then I can ask some follow-up questions.
Where are we at with the state of singleness?
Where are we at, and what are you hearing from people? Maybe that's a more helpful way. Like as like not just for yourself, but like you're making this podcast for a community of people.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a
what
lot
is going on.
This is the main thing that kind of like is a bell in my head is that there's a lot of hopelessness. A lot.
Wow.
Now the thing is that like in the millennial generation. I'm not speaking specifically to Christians, just the millennial generation as a whole, getting married later on in life is the trend. You went from baby boomers down to Gen Xers down to us, there was just less people getting married in their 20s, getting the ring by spring in university, all that kind of stuff. Those trends are kind of going by the wayside in the millennial generation, right? I imagine the next generation is going to be quite similar. And so people who are who really truly desire to be married and want to be married and be able to have kids and all that kind of stuff, and would prefer it in their early 20s, or sorry, in their 20s or in their early to late 30s, because there's not that trend overall in, I'd say, North America. There's a hopelessness. Like, well, when I look to my right and my left at the bus stop, or my right and my left at a restaurant, just to everyday people aren't getting married as quick as possible. They're not getting married as often. They're moving in, they're having families, they're getting common law connected, but they're not necessarily doing the whole, like, yeah, I do. And so you feel a bit lonely in it. So when you want to surround yourself by Christians, right? So you're like, okay, cool, I'm going to surround myself by other Christians. But then even within that, there's such a disparity between men and women in the singleness realm, right? So there's so many single Christian women, and then there's so many less single Christian men. Okay, cool. So now as single Christian women, you're in a church. You're like, cool, I've left a space that felt hopeless. I'm in the church and I'm sitting in a room and I'm looking around and there's 20 single Christian women, and there's 2 single Christian men, and they're your brothers. So, like, what do you do? Like, what do you do? And that's literally the story for so many women. I've spoken to women of all different ages, and they're just like, even in my church scenario, I'm the only one. Also, going to a conference, let's say, you're like, okay, like, I know for me, sometimes I have to pray, hey, God, like, I'm going to this conference. Like, I want it to be more about the fact that I could meet my husband and about the fact that I want to have a revelation from you. So, like, please help me focus my mind and heart. But when I go to this conference, if I do see a cute guy, what's the next step? He's so worried about consent, he never even walks up to me. So now I have to walk up to him? I don't want to do that. Why? Because I want a man who can lead. Cool. So then you're at this stalemate. What do we do? So my thing is, I wanted to create a platform where we can have conversations like that, because I think there's just it's like miscommunication on both sides that needs to change.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting too. And then this dynamic, of course, of when you talk to previous generations, or even just like the cycle, we kind of understand the psychology or the sociology around like relationships are best formed, trust is best built by like doing things together, being around each other in like longer periods of time.
Yeah.
And yet the exact opposite is the nature of this online dating world, where it's a picture, a short profile on somebody. They may or may not even be a real person.
Yeah.
And you assume that you hope that they are a real person. But then from there, you're making like a flash judgment.
Yeah.
There's always another one. There's always another opportunity after that. But you're not basing a decision on your interest in someone on like social ties, cultural, tribal groups. Like it's just like
community.
Like,
you're not.
It's like there's nothing. You're not like on a, like the classic story of like people who meet at college or meet on the mission trip or whatever it may be. They meet doing something together in a social group.
Yeah.
Even if it's like you met at the bar, you all understood what it meant to be there that night with your friends, with their friends. There's something you're learning about them just from being in that place together. But this online world is even more challenging then. And then
I agree.
How do you think, like, whether for yourself or just in general, like what do you hear women saying, or what do you think around this like online thing? Do you think it's like a net positive? Is it negative? Like, do you think, like, do you hate it? Do you love it? I don't know. Like, what is it? A love-hate relationship you have?
It's 100% a love-hate relationship. That's how I can put it, because so many of my friends and women I've connected with because of this podcast have said to me, so I was on the app and then I deleted it 4 days later. That's like the common understanding is I went on it for the dopamine hit, got it, didn't find a guy that I wanted to go on a date with, and so that was it. The sad thing about the app is that, let me say the great thing first. The great thing is if you've never had an experience of going on a date, because I was like, I thought everyone like went on dates when they were like 17. No, they didn't. But being able to go on dates, that's a really great way of doing it, because the people on the app want to go on dates. Now, I believe in dating with intentionality, right? So it's not like you should just be going on a date for the sake of it. But you can kind of assume that on a dating app, people are looking to go on at least a date. So even if you're like brand new and trying to figure it out, like because also, let's say for instance, young adults, right? You're not supposed to be together. Don't hang out together. Bible study, women, men, we're all separate. And then it's like, cool, go get married. And they have no clue how to like be in the same room or communicate with each other. And so there's that confusion about how do I date? How do I do this in a way that honors God? Being on a dating app means you can go on a date and meet someone and learn how you are on dates, what you're nervous about. You can pray more intentionally about how God can prepare you for dates, that sort of thing. So that's what's really great about it. What I've realized lately on dating apps is that I don't give anyone a chance who doesn't quite match up to what I think I need. And how many times, and I'm always asking married people their love story because I'm a romantic through and through. And I'm like, how did you guys meet? They're like, oh, I would have never guessed this would be my guy. I would have never guessed. And I believe that it's because there are things we don't know about ourselves that could be revealed in our partner. And on a dating app, you just swipe left on a person who doesn't quite match up. And I just wish I could give people more of a shot, which is why I'm like, pairing online apps with in-person events, like I've just recently started going to, speed dating, etc. We'll get into that, has been really beneficial because I get to mix it up a little bit. I feel like I'm in control on an app, and then on a speed dating and in person, I'm like a fish out of water and I can't swim.
It's so interesting. I mean, there's a guy that I've been watching a little bit of the content from on social. He's a psychology professor, has, huge following on social media. And he's talking about sort of like the like what's happening with men and sort of his concerns around men and some of this stuff too, like just what you said, this idea that women are ignoring on these apps, like the bottom 80 to 90% of men on the apps. And by bottom, I mean, like, that's most people. It's not really the bottom. It's most people.
Yeah.
And so there's like this basically he's talking about this phenomenon where on digital content, there's like 10% of the men who are getting all this attention and they have all these options. And then this other 80, 90% are feeling like incredibly frustrated by their lack of options. And then women are out there complaining like they just can't find a good man, but like they literally ignored statistically like a huge amount of people who they might have actually had like a happy partnership with, but off of like these superficial things. Like they don't know how to take a photo or something. And so
that's the thing though, isn't it?
And so like you've just ignored them. And then these few guys are getting all the attention and all the dates when like they may not actually be someone you're compatible with.
Oh, so for sure. It's fascinating on both sides. I feel like it's partly to do with the fact that we don't get each other. Like we don't understand what each other's looking for. Because often when I speak to guy friends of mine, I'm like, well, this is how I interpret this profile. He's like, really? Oh, you're kidding. They became that joke about like, why are men always posting dead fishes on their profile? Like they go fishing and they hold up a photo. Okay, well, when I'm as a girl, when I go to brunch, I'm taking a photo. Bus stop, photo. At work, selfie. I'm taking photos all the time. So when I'm ready to set up my profile, I've got a plethora to choose from. But a guy really only not every guy, but a lot of guys only take photos when they're with their friends. Yeah. So they go fishing, they go golfing. So that's what fills up their profile. So when we're looking at the profile, we are looking at it from our own lens saying like, well, I took a photo of myself with friends, no makeup on, doing brunch and being all casual. Another one at Bible study showing that, and it's like, we look at it that way. But a guy is like, I just didn't even have any photos of myself.
The only photo I have is that time I went fishing.
That's it. And so I was like, and this is my little brother telling me that. It blew my mind. I was like, we need to have more conversations. I think there's a missing point. I do think that, there is that shallow side there's a shadow kind of swiping on both sides, but I think there's just a miscommunication about what the profile means on the female side and on the male side. And we're just kind of missing the mark with each other. Because as I said, I show my profile to my guy friends and they're like, oh, this is like amazing. But like, I would never swipe right on you. And I go, why? They go, every photo is souped up. Every photo is high quality. Every photo is this. So I feel a bit insecure about that. I'm like, what? So I thought posting photos of myself, no makeup, but looking amazing would be great. He's like, if you look more plain, maybe I would swipe right. I'm like, that's crazy. That's crazy.
I want to talk to you about the work of Compassion Canada for a minute, because I think that transformation can feel like a buzzword. what does transformation even look like? But one place that I have seen transformation so evident is in the stories of former Compassion-sponsored children. That's the graduates, or you could say the alumni of Compassion's programs, who are adults now, and they're telling stories of how sponsorship impacted them. Like Ria, I've met her myself, and she's originally from the Philippines, and she was sponsored as a kid, and she said that knowing someone cares about you, someone who's never met you, it changes you. And Ria's story is a powerful highlight about how sponsoring changed her life. It built Christ-like confidence in her. It broke cycles of poverty in her family. And today she's a passionate advocate for kids because she was that kid, and now she sponsors a child in her own same community where she grew up. It's this amazing way that she is now part of the solution of breaking those cycles for other people. You can see how child sponsorship transforms lives, and you can see more of Ria's story or all these other alumni who are talking about how it impacted them. And you can learn more about child sponsorship at compassion.ca/if only. Compassion.ca/if only, and the link will be down in the show notes. Okay, now back to the conversation with Meisha. Wow.
But that's how he sees it.
So it's, yeah. And that's, this classic thing around the digital world, whether we're talking about like social media addiction or you're talking about this digital dating thing, it's a first generation of these things. Like no one has been, we get a driver's license, we get trained in how to drive. It's this powerful tool out on the road. We can, really harm some people. And yet like we have this powerful tool in our hand every day, whether we're using it for dating apps or 1,000 other things. And like no one has actually taught a generation how to use it because we're the first, the millennials. Wow. That's what we are. That's what the nature, that's the definition of it. Like this first generation to actually fully embrace online digital life, and no one has been able to guide us. And now we're kind of like trying to play catch up. I'm like, wait a second, you think it means this, but I'm telling you it means this, and like you're missing this opportunity because you're misinterpreting what's going on, or like you feel discouraged, although you get your dopamine hit and then you quit because you didn't find. So like there's all these dynamics of like we're like drunk driving on dating apps, and like nobody thinks that's a good idea in the car, and we all had to get like trained in how to drive proper, all that.
Absolutely. It's so funny because it's super insightful, the fact that we are the first generation of that, because I told someone recently I was on a dating app at 16.
Right. Wow.
And it wasn't a dating app like how they are now, where it's like literally like, do you want to go on a date? But it was this thing called T.Wire, and I lived in Markham, but it was like a Toronto website that everyone, it's like kind of like MySpace, but you'd make a website and then you would like kind of put like a love letter on it, and you had like one photo. And I met my very first boyfriend on that like website.
I've never heard of this.
Oh, yeah. Like I've literally run the gamut. I've done the T.Wire, Plenty of Fish, High Five, Friendster. Like I did the whole way through, and they were about making friends for sure. But
have you Christian mingled?
Yes, I have. Yeah. Again, I think I'm missing. Okay, you know what this is issue too? This is my issue. This is my personal issue. Let's get personal for a second. I am a television producer, right? I make content. So when I see a photo and it's like grainy or pixelated, the thing in me that's like, we need to fix that is so loud. So I do know that I'm part of the shallow crew who's like, why didn't you just take another photo? Like, this is not acceptable. So that's kind of been my issue. On Christian Mingle, that's what I saw a lot of, was guys who were putting their whole heart out there and saying, this is the Bible verse that I love. This is one that means everything to me. And they would be like, say all this stuff, and it was like paragraph after paragraph, and I'm like, this could have been edited, you spelt that wrong, make sure this is, and I'm like, Meisha, you need to get yourself out of that brain. But I think there's also this one thing that we've been hearing a lot of lately, which is men are worried that girls won't find them funny, and then girls are worried that men are going to murder them. Like those two dichotomies, I go, who said that? Like, what was that quote? But I do think there's like I know there is a stronger buy-in when a woman goes on a date than when a man goes on one. We're not only thinking about being on the date or whatever, but we're also thinking about our own safety. So we're reading so much into those pages, way more than I think guys happen to be. And obviously this is all generalization, but that's the impression.
Even the sense of humor thing, that's like when men say they want a woman with a sense of humor, that means something different than when a woman says it. When a woman says, I'm looking for a man with a sense of humor, it means they want to laugh and be funny together. But when a man says it, what they mean is they want the woman to find them funny. Like they want a woman who will laugh at
Yeah.
their jokes. Where when a woman says, I'm looking for a guy with a sense of humor, it's more just sort of generally someone who would laugh in
Oh, for
general, not
sure.
specifically at their own jokes.
Oh, for sure.
So
I
yeah,
totally
there are
agree.
these like constant disconnects, but let's go there because this is a place I was hoping we could get in the conversation before we end. Is this idea of, you talked about you're the producer, you're looking at it through this lens, but I'd like to go a little bit higher up on this. There's this whole thing about being a face on camera, which I'm sure affects your dating life, as you've already kind of mentioned. But then the broader thing about we talked about before we hit record, this idea of Meisha as a voice that now people are listening to because you have a camera and a microphone and access to that stuff. And like, should people be listening to you? Like this thing, I don't mean like, I'm not questioning it myself, but this idea of what happens when we go in front of cameras and media. And we, before we hit record, we were talking about like Christian musicians who have these scandalous, sketchy things going on, and we love their music. What do we do with that? How do you navigate that world of being someone who's putting out content, who people are looking to for encouragement, advice, but like you're a normal person.
Yeah.
You're not a pastor. Let's just start there. You're not a pastor.
Nope. And I never went to Bible college.
People are looking at you for like care and spiritual support of some kind.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
There is a burden for sure of right now in my life where, because I'm the one on the podcast, I'm the one on the platform, I'm the one on the TV show, the panel, whatever it is, talking about my faith and my walk, that people think that I know I'm the be all and end all. Like they should like frame their Christian walk on mine. And that burden has become such a loud thing in my life as of late because I'm speaking so vulnerably about my life. Now, what I decided to do was similar to what a musician would do when they are songwriting. They're going through something and then they write about it and they make a song about it so that you see you relate to them a little bit. That's what I've decided to do. I pull things from my actual diary, my actual journal that aren't curated, that aren't edited. That are just honest feelings about when I am confused by God, or I feel like God is not listening to me, or I feel like God has let me down. Those kinds of conversations I talk about. And I don't always end it with a bow on the end because I'm literally in it right now. And that's why it was important for me to make the podcast while I was single, because I will be married. I believe that with all my heart. But right now I wanted to share with them that like, in this moment, I do not have it all figured out, but this is how I'm doing it. And I would love to find out how other women are doing it too. I will say though, as the podcast host, there is, and as a producer on other shows and things like that, people have been inviting me to do speaking engagements, right? So like, oh, hey, I'd love you to keynote our conference. I'd love you to do whatever that is. And I'm talking to God about it. I'm like, okay, God, like, should I do this one? Should I do this one? And the overwhelming message from God is like, I want you to feed on my word. I want you to feed on my word. I want you to pick up my Bible and be excited to read it and to develop your understanding of my word. And so for me, the most important thing is if I get a platform, then I'm using it to direct people back to God. That's not them directing them to me and my story necessarily, but it's directing them back to the source, because then it's not about me, right?
Right.
I do feel though that as a public figure, it was really weird to say that, but as a public figure, if I do something, let's say I go to a bar and take like 20 tequila shots or something like that, and then I do something ridiculous on like a whatever. If that were to happen, let's say, right?
I mean, you'd end up in the hospital for so
long.
I
was like, I don't know. I don't even know, because I've done shots since I've got saved, literally, like it's been so long. But literally, like, just for those people who don't know, I got saved again at 20. So that's kind of like, I did have that experience earlier on. But anyways, if that were to happen, I have people in my life, actually, it's something you mentioned, my board of directors, my personal board of directors, who I'm accountable to. So that's really important to me, people who aren't yes people. So as a public figure, I can still do what I believe God has called me to do and put my face on something and say like, hey, listen to what I have to say. God is speaking through me. But at the same time, when I mess up, that there's an accountability there, and that when I mess up, it's not going to hurt someone else's journey. Because that's something I always think about when a pastor messes up in some way really publicly, that there's always the number two, the person who's right beneath them, like they're being mentored by, who it shakes their actual faith.
Yeah.
And my thing is,
100%.
what can I do to protect that? And there's not a foolproof plan, but that's really important to me. Who am I actually mentoring? Am I always, when I get on the mic, explaining that I'm not a perfect person, but not even just saying it? Am I telling you the story of how I'm not a perfect person? Because you'll always hear pastors say it from the pulpit, like, "Oh, I'm the first one to say I'm not perfect." I go, "Cool, give me the receipts. Give me the
Right.
receipts. I want to
Yeah.
know."
Okay.
That's my main thing.
As much as we can, like, how do we draw the connect? How do you connect those dots for people? You know,
Yeah.
I think some people are a little overshare, but yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I just honestly, it's been a while, and I'm still figuring out how
Yeah.
to share my story and also protect parts of my story, because not everyone deserves to hear your testimony, every part of your testimony, because I'm still my testimony is still a work in progress. But
Yeah.
I'm blessed to be able to share this singleness story and just help other women not feel alone in it. I told a story recently about how my 32nd birthday, so about a year ago, I had to go to a wedding, and on my birthday, as a single person, going to a wedding where you don't really know anyone, you have to sit at a table by yourself or with people you don't know. It was like the worst, most stressful time going in, and I had horrible thoughts about having that experience. But God spoke to me in that time and helped me in that time and comforted me in that time. But I had to tell a real story. Like at that time I told it, it only just happened a couple months ago. So I wanted to make it clear it's still a work in progress, and so am I. And here are the
Yeah.
receipts.
Yeah. That's so good. I think there's this, even if we're talking about back to the conversation we've had around social media and what's trending, what I'm seeing from both what resonates with me personally, but also experts I follow and watch and try to learn from on TikTok and social media in general, is this idea of we have to decide, are we going to tell the story from like we're like the mentor guide above, we've already passed it, and we're telling you how to get to where we are on the up the mountain, or we're like we've gone through that past, come, or are we like wanting to position ourselves as like the journeyer beside, like we're walking the trail together and sharing stories along the way, and each person has something to offer the other. And long story short, you can take either approach.
Yeah.
Neither is wrong. But what I'm seeing a trend of, hashtag trending, and saying hashtag trending is not trending. I'll tell you that. Don't do that. You sound like an old person. But I literally saw this as like the trend, like the trending page on TikTok is the accounts that don't talk down but talk beside are accounts that seem to be getting resonance with people right now, where there isn't anything actually wrong with being the guide ahead who's saying, I've been here, let me tell you how to get there. That's fine. And actually a lot of Christian teaching comes from that way. But I think people are also feeling very lonely and feeling very tired on the journey of life. And so the accounts that are saying, here's what worked for me, I'm not saying this is like the 5-step plan of how it'll work for you. And actually, that is the kind of content I've often created on social with Word Made Digital, is like the teaching content. But what I'm seeing and what I'm being challenged by is what you're saying, is this like, if you can come alongside and do the journey together and say, here's how it's working for me. If there's something from that you can take for yourself, that's great. But I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm not trying to I'm not trying to be your guru, your mentor,
Yeah, you
your
don't want
pastor.
me as that.
I'm on the journey with you. It's your single story. It's my
Right.
single story, whatever,
Yeah.
as your podcast is called. And it seems like that kind of content is really resonating with people because we have enough people ahead of us telling us what to do. What we actually want is a friend on the road.
That's it. I just want to make sure that every woman who listens feels like they have a friend in me, and that whatever they say, it's not going to be anything that I'm super surprised by because I'm there too. Like I had that thought that was, I call it my dirtbag moments where I could say something or think something where I'm like, oh, I should probably not tell anyone I thought that. I've been telling him. I'm like, here's the side of me that maybe we share. And here's how God is speaking to me. Here's how I'm being convicted. Holy Spirit is convicting me by that or for that. I want to do that. I want to be on the journey with single women because my singleness journey doesn't end the day I get married. There's still so much that happens after spending so long as a single woman. And then you if you get married, if that's part of your story, there's still those parts of you that remember what it was like to be single, and you hold on to those, the fears, the learnings, the whatever.
You got to always pick like what you eat, like what you order for dinner. Like if you're going to like your Uber Eats order, like if you want Thai food, you're getting Thai food. You don't have to negotiate that with anybody.
I love that. And one day I'm going to have to compromise. I'm going to have to be like, you know what? How about we do what I want for 5 days and you for 2? You know, like one day I'll have to do that, you know? And that's okay.
I mean, I'm not sure that's your best advice that you've given today, but I hear what you're saying.
I'm an imperfect person. But when it comes to my food, let me tell you right now, we ain't playing around.
You know what you're going to do? You're going to get 2 different orders, and that's how you're going to have a happy household. You're just going to get 2 Uber Eats orders and just call it what it is. If they want pizza and you want Thai food, you're just going to get 2 orders.
Yeah.
Meisha, when people want to check out what you're doing right now, the latest content, where do you want to send people online to find you? And knowing that this is going to be coming out like spring 2023, maybe there's like new places you want to encourage us to go, but where do you want to send us?
Well, I want you to follow my journey because a lot is happening and I'm really excited about what God is doing in so many realms of my life. So follow my Instagram at I am Meisha. Everything is there. Everything's fed through there. So I would love to get to know anyone who's interested in finding about my single journey. But also if they want to meet, they want to have me at their conference speaking and journeying alongside as opposed to being I don't know how to explain it. But anyways, follow me on Instagram at I am Meisha.
I am Meisha. Well, Meisha Watson, thanks so much for joining on Word Made Digital. I love our chats. I love running into you at some of these conferences. Yeah. I think you challenge my own thinking on some of the stuff in some really fun ways, important ways. And I hope you're doing that for a ton of people. I love the content you're putting out on social right now. So people need to go find you. Thanks so much for joining.
Thanks, girl.
Meisha Watson, always a fun conversation. I never really know where it's going to take us. It's always a little bit fun and a surprise, and that's what you're going to get if you check out her podcast too. But next week on this podcast, we're rounding out this run of episodes with someone named Andrew Noble. He's a thinker, well-read, incredibly well-read on the issues of technology and digital and how this affects us and how we should think about that as Christians. So he has a podcast as well. The podcast is called, I love this, not WWJD, what would Jesus do, but what would Jesus tech? And so that's who we're going to be talking to next week. And he is thoughtful, intellectual, and wrestling through these issues of our time. So hope you enjoy that conversation next week. Thanks to our sponsors, Compassion Canada, Lifting Children from Poverty in Jesus' name, and the podcast Scripture Untangled by the Canadian Bible Society. Amazing content from them as well as we wrestle through how to understand Scripture for ourselves. So see you on the YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe, rate, review, share it with your friends, send us a message, comment. We would love to hear from you. It helps us know. I love running into people who are listening to podcasts, but it helps us know when you comment, rate, review, all that kind of stuff, who's out there listening. And we would just love to get your support in that way and make more podcasts that you want to hear. We love your feedback. All right. See you, my friends, next week on Word Made Digital with Andrew Noble.